On this episode of Bobscaping, we're going to be looking at sharpening electric shears, and the principle is actually the same as sharpening gas-powered shears. The gas-powered shears we use in the videos have two cutting sides to them, whereas this set of electric shears only has one. This is a pair of Little Wonder electric trimmers. They're a slightly better grade than most of the ones available on the market today. And they're actually the ones we used for landscaping for a number of years before we went to the gas-powered Echoes that we use in most videos. So when you sharpen this sort of shear, what you want to do is first you want to clean your blades up. You can use a razor knife like this to get the excess gunk off of them. I've already gone over most of these blades. If they're hard to get into, sometimes a small flat bit screwdriver works just as well. So you just go over these and scrape off your extra gunk. You know, shrubs tend to build up, the cuttings leave a residue that builds up on these blades. So the first step's to clean that off. You may want to go in advance with some oil, some oil or WD-40 to help loosen up that debris. Scrape that off. Okay, so then after you dry them off a little bit, you're ready for sharpening. Thing to remember with this type of blade is that you only want to sharpen one edge. In other words, this flat area where they rub together, you don't want to touch. You want to leave this underside of these alone and the underside of these alone. So you're just really sharpening this one edge here, one edge here, one edge here, and the same on the reverse side of these blades. But the flat areas where they rub together, other than cleaning, you don't do any sharpening. Okay, now there are a couple ways to do it. This is a pretty big flat file, and it's really too big for this purpose, but there are smaller ones you can buy. You could use a flat file to sharpen these edges, and you want to try to maintain the bevel that's been on these edges from the factory. You could also use a sharpening stone if it was the right size. This is a small one, but still it's hard to get down and work between these blades. So your best all-around solution is a Dremel tool, and Dremel makes a number of different sharpening stones that fit in the ends. In this case, this is actually a stone for sharpening chainsaw chains, but the size, the width of it, and the length makes it pretty handy for this. There are multiple speeds here. We don't need a whole lot of speed. Pick it up maybe to the 2 or 3 range, and we're going to start sharpening these edges. You can see right away where it's sharpening because it's getting to be a lighter, the metal's getting to be a lighter color. Now, of course, it's this lower edge that's the most important, but again, you want to maintain that same bevel that came from the factory on these blades. Should wear safety glasses if anytime you're doing something like this. And you see I have gloves on. It seems like anytime you're working around sharp tools, you run a greater risk of cutting yourself if you don't have gloves on. So here we are moving down to the next one. And needless to say, you want to make sure these are unplugged before you start. They can trim branches. Your finger would be no problem for them. Okay, so then we'd actually finish all the ones on the front side of those, and then probably go up the back side of those, and then turn these over and repeat the same procedure on the reverse side. You know, clean them up, get the gunk off. You can see I have put some oil on here to help loosen that up. And then basically you just repeat the same procedure. Just go down each blade. Whoops. Can't seem to keep that from spinning around the other side. And again, you want to pay most attention to this lower edge, because that's really the main cutting edge. The rest is just a matter of maintaining the bevel on that blade. Okay, so that's the one aspect of whether shears cut properly, as if they're sharp and lubricated. The next is if the blades have the proper tension between them. If they're too loose, and have too much play between them, they can tear or shred when they cut. If they're too tight, of course they'll bind up, heat up, and you'll threaten your motor. You could burn up your motor. They might not even run. So the key is to get the proper tension on these adjusters, and each catalog has instructions on doing that. Basically, on these little wonders, you loosen each one of these 3 screws and nuts, and then you gradually tighten each one till they slow down. Then you back off, I believe it's a 1/4 turn. Then you do the next one and the next one. So having that proper adjustment and sharp blades is the key to getting a clean cut with power shears. For this episode of Bobscaping, this is Bob.